Evercold, the next expansion for Final Fantasy XIV's announcement, and the release of patch 7.5. Safe to say we've had a tidal wave of new information for this game. We now know where we're going. We know a few of the things we're going to be dealing with, and it's a perfect time to sit back and theorize about all the different ways this could play out. That's where you come in. I asked you guys to leave me your wildest theories for the future of Final Fantasy XIV Evercold, and you guys left a lot, and today we're going to start working through them. Hello everybody, it's your boy Jmulls, and you guys have some really potentially on point observations. Let's begin. First up, you know we have to talk about my boy, Zenos Yay Galvis. So today's first theory comes from @RexBshot, who says, I think the Makodi in Evercold trailer is referring to Zenos. Rather than dying at the edge of the universe, I can see one of the Winterers whisking him off to the fourth, and his arrival somehow changes the destiny of that reflection. Halmarot calls him Wanderer, and so does the Makodi. This was actually something I kind of wanted to wait for the next theory stream to talk about, but I think this is as good a time as any to address this little point right here. So what's going on? Well, there are two instances in the English localization lately that have referred to this Wanderer. In the Evercold trailer at the very end, the storytelling Makodi old lady, you see at the end of the Evercold teaser trailer, we had this bit right here.
But everything changed when they arrived.
The traveler, the one from the sky.
Aye, though in those days, we knew them as... Wanderer.
The traveler, the one from the sky, I, though in those days we knew him as Far or Our Wanderer. That's instance number 1 of Wanderer being referenced. This rabbit hole will go deep, by the way. But to a few days after the reveal of the Evercold teaser trailer, we get to the release of patch 7.5. In there, we have a confrontation with Halmarot and Calyx, and at the end, Halmarot rage baits me specifically by bringing up Zenos, because she knows I want my boy back. Besides that, she says something very interesting right here. Like the pariah and wanderer who satisfied his own when he brought the star to the brink of ruin to face you. Halmarot is drawing a connection between the Warrior of Light and how we are proceeding in the Godless Realm saga with the selfish desire of Zenos Yay Galvis. Actually, it's Viator. This is now like the second reference to Wanderer we've had relatively recently. But we can peel back the layers even a bit further. Notice the scythe. Remember in Endwalker, Zenos' job changed over to Reaper because he didn't want to play Samurai anymore. Honestly, can't blame him. Let's take a step back, if you will, back to the days of us watching the Endwalker full trailer. At the end of that, we had my goat here get up from his goon chair, walk over and aura farm for a bit, and look at the way he uses his scythe and the way he poses with it and stares at the moon here. Bear that in mind, bear that in mind. Now, let's look at the end of the Evercold teaser trailer one more time. Right here, right here, right here. Look at it. Look at the pose. Look at the pose. Look at the pose. It's not identical, but it is very similar. Now, it is abundantly clear they are definitely trying to draw some kind of thematic parallel between the Warrior of Light and Zenos. But alongside clearly doing that here, they are referring to a character called the Wanderer. I highly doubt we're the Wanderer that is being referred to here, simply because the timeline doesn't really match up unless this is like Y'shtola the later years and this is like a hard cut to the future or something. I highly doubt where the Wanderer being referred to here. But this is where things get really interesting. It was established with Shadowbringers that the way time flows between the source and a shard doesn't have to be 1-for-1. It fluctuates, and when we were in the midst of Shadowbringers, it just happened to line up. But it's been over an expansion at this point since we have seen Zenos. We last dealt with him at the edge of the universe, right? After the Meteon fight. But since then, we had the Endwalker patches where we dealt with Zero and Golbez. Zero, by the way, being the former Void Scent that Zenos used while he was a Reaper. Then we had all of Dawntrail and the Dawntrail patches. It's not like that all happened in the span of like 2 days or 3 days, but even if it did, if they want to write the story in such a way to where the time passing for the source and the fourth isn't 1-for-1 and a good amount of time is passed in the fourth, there's a world out there where they write the story where after the events of Endwalker, the Winterers are Halmarot, possibly explaining why she knows about the scythe, this is just one of her conjurations, by the way, it's not like the actual physical Zenos scythe, could be the explanation for why she knows about this scythe was that she and or the Winterers went to retrieve him and then sent them to the fort. Perhaps the one-eyed Odin guy we kind of think is the Winterer, we theorize, maybe he isn't the Winterer, maybe it's Zenos, or they're both there, and they're both under like the overall umbrella for whatever reason. Now, is it the strongest theory ever? No, but oh man, I think it's kind of cool. Now, there's a bunch of different ways that could explain away all these different connections. It's like perhaps Halmarut just witnessed a fight with Zenos, or she at some point had seen Zenos, was just following us or something. That's entirely possible. There's a bunch of different ways you can explain away why she knows about Zenos' scythe, right? It could also just be they want to use the word Wanderer in a bunch of different contexts for the story thematically for whatever reason that's yet to be revealed, and they're just laying the groundwork for whatever that will be. There's a bunch of ways they can explain away a bunch of these different things, but I'm just saying this is one path they could pursue. And if it brings me back to Zenos, you know what? Maybe it's a path worth walking down. But let's move on to the next theory. Next up, we have a rather popular one going around. We have at Ascapelios, who says, we don't have a hammer class yet. Viking new tank maybe? Especially since they've been really not subtle about the Norse, let's call them inspirations for Evercold in the 4th overall. A lot of people have been saying, well, we're getting 2 new jobs, one of which is a tank. Something in the style of a Viking makes a lot of sense, like maybe, like a Valkyrie maybe, like a spear and shield type of thing. Maybe something along those lines. For me, I think Yoshi P was being very upfront with what the next main tank was going to be. What do I mean by this? Historically, when it comes to fan fests, Yoshi P likes to tease what one of the new jobs is based on the shirt he's wearing. No, I am not joking. It sounds a little bit crazy, but we all play Final Fantasy XIV. That kind of comes with, well, everything at this point. The shirt, guess who's back, and it's Cape Westwind jabroni, Ritson whatever. You may remember this guy from back in the day because his trial was notorious because it lasted about 2 GCDs and you were in and out in the like, what, 6 seconds? Like 6-7 seconds, something like that. You can see from his shirt though, the weapon of choice he has on him, 2 shield guns. We know the next tank being introduced in Final Fantasy XIV Evercold is a main tank alongside Paladin, Warrior, Gunbreaker, and Dark Knight being off tanks. Paladin and whatever the next tank will be a main tank. I think the shirt is just being very on the nose with it. I just think this is the next job. It's going to be like 2 giant shield cannon things, 1 in each arm. That makes a ton of sense to me. 1, it's the freaking shirt. 2, we know the tank is going to be a main tank. The only other main tank right now for the evolved combat system that we know of is Paladin, because that's what they said. Paladin just aesthetically looks very defensive because it has a shield. That has 2 of them and they have cannons on them. Personally, I'm gunning for this. I think they could do a bunch of really cool stuff, and they also talked about one of the mechanics they want to do for main tanks is having counterattacks. Well, when it comes to having 2 like giant guns strapped to your shields, I can see a very easy way to make this a counterattack based tank. You block with the shield, and then as you're blocking with it, you just fire with the shield. It just makes a lot of sense to me. And they also mentioned that both new jobs going forward for Evercold, both of those jobs are going to be new to Final Fantasy XIV. I haven't played every Final Fantasy, but I don't recall a job involving 2 shield cannons. I feel like a lot of people are trying to read between the leaves a bit and go for lower probability guesses. I just think this is kind of the layup one. This feels like the obvious pick to me. Though a hammer job at some point would be cool. I also just don't think we're going to get it in Evercold because the other job is going to be a physical ranged one. Strap yourselves in, people. We got a long one. We have at Taheen Q, who says, pointing out that the thing piercing through the giant in the Evercold trailer looks like a seed, gave me a lot of thoughts, especially with all the theming around seasons in Norse mythology. What do you do when winter comes? You sow the seeds for next year's harvest. My current theory is that Halmarut's real name will be Freya, or that she's at least a stand-in for Freya, the Norse goddess of spring, love, and fertility. Hey now. She might think we're already doomed and is making sure that life will endure by using those giant creatures to suck up ether to use for those seeds. Obviously, I might be completely off. but I thought this could potentially be a nice parallel with Emmet. Emmet thought we were unworthy of the ancients, free-sundering Asians, and wanted to sacrifice the present to bring back the past. Halmarut could be thinking that we are not strong enough to protect life on the star and wants to sacrifice the present to save the future. Now, throw in there the key named ethos, which could imply that following some ethics and morals is the way forward, rather than Calyx's utilitarian approach or Halmarut's accelerationism, and you got your philosophical debate ready to go. Okay, what do we mean by the seed thing? Well, you may not know this, but Evercold already has a website. So if we go to the media tab and go to artwork and we scroll down a little bit, we can find a picture for the arcane colossi of unknown providence. Remember those giant titans from the Evercold trailer? Yeah, these guys. You can see the giant, like, seed-looking thing in their chest. This part of the cinematic is very, let's call it, artistic. And while each of these colossi do look different to each other, this is probably a better approximation for what it's going to look like in-game to some degree. And you can see this giant thing going through, like, both sides of its chest here. In the front, out the back, there's a giant hole. And when we look more closely at this thing, actually, you know what? I never really noticed that the hole is not just, like, a regular hole. There's also like these like extra little canyons here, and you have the central like seed looking thing, and there's something wrapping around it that is concealing something different in the core. It does kind of look like a seed, and one of the theories I talked about in a previous video, this one specifically, is that I wondered if these could be like, you know how in like some anime they have these things called like enslavement collars? Well, maybe it's like a similar principle to that, but it's just rammed through their core, or it's there by design and it's essentially either like consuming, trapping, or manipulating ether with that central seed thing. Now, if we go off the seed theory and that this is meant for like preservation purposes later down the line, which again, Calyx's organization was called Preservation. Obviously, he's not the one in charge of the fourth or what's going on there, just another interesting little parallel. It could be a seed meant to winter the storm of the fourth and also just the solstice to come. Now, when it comes to Halmarut's real name possibly being Freya, I don't know how significant it's going to be. Now, don't get me wrong, Emmet revealing that he's Hades was a big moment, right? What I'm not necessarily sure on is that they reveal that Halmarut is like Freya, so then they have to do this, this, and this because of that. Now, they could follow some mythological components, they could, or they could also do it very loosely. The only thing I'm not entirely sure on is if they're going to call like Halmarut Freya, because I don't know if they want to tie Halmarut to the fourth or not, or if they're going to tie her to a different shard that leans more into a different aesthetic in like 9.0 or like 10.0 or something like that. Now, there is one other thing I want to address that I can already imagine is going to happen. People will say, well, there might be a connection between the fourth and Halmarut because look at this character, the totally not Aerith stand-in for Evercold. She looks very similar to Halmarut, especially when you look at like the wing scales on the side of her head, right? There's one kind of small problem with this. Look at her forehead. There's a scale there. When we look at a Halmarut in-game, she doesn't have that scale. A lot of the other features are very strikingly similar, but that scale's not there. So I do think there's a good possibility of Halmarut being connected to the fourth to some degree, possibly even to that character. I don't know, though, if that character is supposed to be Halmarut herself, though. Halmarut is not one of the Unsundered, so maybe it's like a shard of Halmarut that has slightly different features. Like, maybe that's the direction they go with this. Time will tell, though. I don't know. I find it fascinating either way, though. Next up, we have a really interesting one to think about. We have @Saxon7390 who says, with these colossi having seeds in their chests, a few images of a world tree. I don't think we're playing the role of Thor, but Loki, and bringing about a Ragnarok in some capacity to the fourth, but through a rejoining. We're playing the Ascian role without being rash about it. Now, I definitely agree that this story going forward is going to be a narrative inversion of the Heinlein and Zodiac arc where we fought against Emmet and the Ascians. We're going to, in some way, almost take up their role. I don't think we're just going to do what Halmarut and Calyx are trying to do and just rejoin the world straight up. I think Dawntrail will probably be the blueprint, where we take a section of the world and we just transplant that to the source. There's a reason Dawntrail told that story. There's a reason we've been telling stories where we can transfer ether from one shard to the other. They want these mechanics in their back pocket now, narratively so they can bring them out and really explore them in the future. Final Fantasy XIV is very kind of famous for doing this. They love playing the long game when it comes to these overall narrative structures. Now, whether we're supposed to represent Thor or Loki, I'm kind of down for either interpretation. I think that could be really dang cool. There is a part of me, though, that even if we strictly don't need to do it, I really hope we bring our ship over to the fourth, because the ship is called Ragnarok, and for a Norse-themed expansion, I just think that would be really dang cool. What I do think is going to happen, though, is that it's going to take us a while to get to this point, because we just had that bit in 7.5 of Calyx and Halmarud basically telling us that, hey, our plan is to rejoin these shards before the solstice happens, because we'll be able to save some people by doing that instead of just waiting around for the solstice and everyone dies. It's a Charlie problem at the end of the day. And if this story and this overall framing is going where I probably imagine it's going to in some way, they probably have to show us narratively that the old methodology we used to incorporate and just, well, actively do is no longer going to be sufficient. They're going to probably have to show us that instead of just telling us it like in 7.5. So I imagine there's going to be some time for them to build up to this point in time where we realize, hey, we have to approach this fundamentally differently to what we did during the Heidelberg Zodiac arc. Just flexing our might and biding our time and defeating a boss isn't going to solve every issue we're going to deal with, unless it ends up being that. Who knows? I just don't know, though, if they would tell a story where we have to willingly sacrifice a bunch of people in order to save the many. I don't know if that is a card they would be willing to play. So we go back to what I was talking about a little bit before. I could see them saying, hey, this shard is essentially doomed. Let's take all the people that we can, put them on like these floating islands on the fourth, because I imagine there's probably people scattered on the ground below, and let's just like Control X, Control V this onto the source, and if we end up liking the people of the fourth, we can put them in Gridani where all the cool people are, and if we don't like them, we can shove them off to like Old Da or like Limpster somewhere. I could see them kind of doing that. It gets those really cool moments where we have to like allow a shard to either wither away or just be destroyed, while also allowing us to enable a rejoining, but also save as many people as we possibly can, to where we're just still the de facto good guy. Because let's be fair here, I don't think it's reasonable to put expectations on Square Enix to tell a story that they are highly unlikely to tell. I think it would be really dang cool if at some point we have to take up the role of the Winterers in a way and say, okay, maybe you guys kind of had a point. We might have to rejoin a shard, or like we try to fix everything ourselves. We try to save everybody and the shard. We doom the entire world to damnation, and we have to suffer the consequences of that. Maybe they would be willing to pull that trigger. We talked about that in that previous theory video that I talked about. I think they could do that. I just don't know how likely it is that they would tell a story like that. It's not outside the realm of possibility. I just kind of think they would try to have it conclude in such a way where we save as many people as we reasonably can. But I do agree. I think they're going for a couple of narrative inversions. They want to establish, as we talked about earlier in the video, that parallel between Zenos moving forward with his selfish ambitions and basically dooming the entire world for those ambitions with the Warrior of Light, and approaching what's going to come with our own methodologies and our own selfish desire to be the hero and save everybody. They are kind of building up to this. It's just a matter of how they execute on it. And I also do think we're going to have to find a way to rejoin shards, just not in the ass-scene way to do it. I think we are building up to that. It's just a matter of packaging, how they want to wrap this all up and portray it. But I think that's one of the really interesting bits of where the story is right now, especially after we had 7.5 Part 1's MSQ and we had the Evercold announcement. We have a rough idea of what we're doing, where we're going, and what's going to happen. We're going to go to the fourth. We're going to deal with another Winter's plot. Halmarud and Calyx will be on the cuck chair watching it all happen. We're going to go to the fourth. Stuff's going to happen. But there's so many different like paths they could follow. It's so fascinating right now, man. And their storytelling has gotten so much better over the course of the Dawn Trail patches. God, I want to see what these expanded trailers for Evercold are going to look like. I need them now. But guys, the future is bright, and I guess it's also ever cold. So here's where you come in. Leave a comment down below with your wildest, your wackiest theories for the future of the story and for Final Fantasy XIV Evercold. How do you think Evercold's going to play out? What do you think's going to happen? I want your wildest theories. Leave them in the comments down below, and I may react to them in a future video. And while you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe, because trust me, we're gonna have a lot more to talk about in the future, and you're gonna want to stick around. And it also really helps support the channel and future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And if you haven't noticed, I like to yap, and I play both World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV, and the state of each MMO is in a very interesting spot right now. You see, what one game gets right, the other kind of gets wrong, and also vice versa. It's a really fascinating situation. Want to find out more? Check out this video right here. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye, everybody, until we meet again.